husband and I had been together since college. I thought nothing and no one could come between us. Part 1. I thought I knew him. We met when we were 19, young, broke, and in love with the idea of building a life from scratch. By the time we were 32, we had the dream house, the 2 kids, and matching coffee mugs that read, "Forever Yours." I wasn't naive. I knew marriage wasn't always magical, but I believed in us. We'd made it through my postpartum depression, his father's passing, and the stress of moving across the country for his new job. If we could survive all that, we could survive anything. Or so I thought. It started with little changes. He began working late. That wasn't unusual. His job at the firm had always been demanding. But this was different. He came home smelling faintly of perfume. Not mine. He started carrying his phone into the bathroom. Not unusual, but he turned the screen away from me when I walked by. I didn't want to be the paranoid wife, the kind who checks her husband's texts, so I didn't. I gave him space, trusted him, and in doing so, I gave her space too. Her name was Danielle. At first, she was just a name in passing. Danielle said the client is changing the scope. Danielle booked the conference room. Danielle ordered lunch for the team. He spoke about her the way someone mentions a pen they use every day. Casual, familiar, unimportant, until it wasn't. I remember the night everything changed. He came home late, past midnight. I was in bed, pretending to be asleep. He undressed in the dark, quietly, as if trying not to wake a stranger. I could smell her on him, something sweet and cheap, and underneath it, guilt. The next morning I asked, "Everything okay at work?" He nodded too quickly. "Yeah, just a long day." I stared at him. This man who once cried watching up with me, who used to kiss my forehead when I had a migraine. He looked like my husband, but something was missing from his eyes. The warmth, the openness, the us. I didn't confront him right away. I waited, I watched, and one night while he was in the shower, I finally checked his phone. There it was, text from D. "Miss you already. When will she be out again? I want you to myself." Last night was everything. My hands shook, my chest went hollow. I wanted to scream, throw the phone, storm into the bathroom and demand the truth, but I didn't. Instead, I walked out of the house and drove for hours. That night I cried not just for the betrayal, but for the years, the memories, the babies we raised, the woman I had become. Too trusting, too tired, too blind. When I returned, he was asleep. I lay next to him, staring at the ceiling, and made a silent promise. This wasn't going to destroy me. This was going to wake me up. Part 2. The confrontation I never wanted. The next morning, everything looked the same. The sun filtered through the curtains, our daughter spilled cereal on the floor, and my husband hummed as he packed his work bag. But nothing felt the same. I moved through the house like a stranger, observing a life that no longer felt like mine. My mind played back every smile he gave me over the past few weeks, every "I love you" that now sounded scripted, every time he looked down at his phone and smirked. I had always imagined that if someone cheated on me, I'd know instantly. A gut feeling, a scream in my chest, some warning. But the truth had crept in slowly, one lie at a time, until I was drowning in it without ever realizing I was underwater. That night after the kids were asleep, I told him we needed to talk. He sat across from me at the dining table, phone in hand, thumb scrolling as if we were discussing groceries. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I just said, "How long have you been sleeping with Danielle?" He froze, completely. For a moment, I think he considered lying. I saw the calculations in his eyes. But maybe it was the way I looked at him, empty, calm, done, that made him sigh and whisper, "I didn't mean for it to happen." That sentence, that pathetic, familiar line, I wanted to laugh. "You didn't mean to text her at midnight? Or touch her in our bed? Or come home reeking of someone else's perfume?" He looked down. "It was a mistake." I stood up. "No, forgetting to pick up milk is a mistake. What you did was a choice, over and over again." I expected more denial, more gaslighting. But instead, he just sat there, silent, letting my words tear into the space between us like shrapnel. Maybe he had nothing left to say. Maybe he knew I was done listening. The next few days were a blur. I moved into the guest room. He slept on the couch. We barely spoke unless it was about the kids. I felt like a ghost in my own home, walking the halls of a life I no longer belonged to. But something unexpected began to happen in that silence. I started to remember who I was before him, before Danielle, before the betrayal. I went back to my old journal, tucked away in a box under the bed. I hadn't written in it in years. The last entry was about our second child's birth. I flipped to a new page and wrote one word: breathe. I took long walks. I cried on park benches. I called my sister, something I hadn't done in months, and told her everything. She listened. She cursed him. She reminded me that I was still whole, even if he had tried to break me. One night, I found a drawing from our daughter. It was of our family. Me, her little brother, and her dad. Except she had drawn him standing far away from the rest of us, facing another stick figure with long hair. Children know. Even when we think they don't, they feel it. That was the night I decided. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to fight for a man who didn't fight for me. I was going to protect my children and myself. Part 3. Leaving wasn't the hardest part. Staying would have been the morning I told him to leave. He looked more shocked than when I first confronted him, as if deep down he thought I'd never go through with it, that I'd stay for the kids, for the history, for the illusion. But I had already stayed too long in a burning house, thinking I could put out the flames with my bare hands. I'm not doing this for revenge, I told him, standing by the doorway with my arms crossed as he packed a small duffel bag. I'm doing this because I finally remembered who I am, and I'm not the kind of woman who begs to be loved. He didn't argue. Maybe guilt silenced him, or maybe he knew anything he said would only prove me right. As the door shut behind him, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt numb, exhausted, like I had just torn off my own skin to escape the infection underneath. The next weeks were a strange mix of grief and clarity. Some days I missed the version of him I thought I married, the one who made me tea when I was sick, who danced with our daughter in the kitchen. But that version wasn't real. It was a costume, a part he played until he got bored. My best friend, or the woman who used to be, never reached out. Not once. Maybe shame kept her away. Or maybe in her own twisted world, she believed she'd won. But what exactly did she win? A man who cheats on the woman he promised forever to? A life built on stolen moments and broken vows? I wasn't jealous of her. I pitied her. My children asked questions, of course. Why doesn't Daddy sleep here anymore? Will we all live together again someday? I answered carefully, with honesty, but also gentleness. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that hurt other people, I said, brushing our daughter's hair one night. But what matters is that you're safe and loved and will always be okay. It wasn't perfect, nothing about this was, but it was real, and that had to be enough. One evening I found myself watching a video on my phone. One of those silly clips we used to make as a family. Laughter, tickle fights, our daughter's giggle echoing through the living room. For a second it crushed me. But then I realized something. Even lies can hold beautiful moments, and even betrayal can't erase the joy we once had. I could grieve the good while letting go of the bad. I started therapy. I cried a lot. I forgave myself for not seeing it sooner. And then I started to heal. Not all at once, not loudly, but in small, steady ways, like breathing easier in my own bed, smiling at a stranger in the grocery store, playing music while cooking dinner just for me and the kids. The pain didn't vanish, but I stopped letting it define me. He called a few times to apologize, to ask if there was a chance. To say it meant nothing. But I had learned by then, people who risk everything for nothing don't deserve a second chance. Part 4. Rebuilding from the ashes. There's something no one tells you about life after betrayal. It doesn't end with them leaving. That's just the beginning. The real work starts after the door closes, when the silence is loud and the memories try to rewrite themselves into lies. I spent months reclaiming the pieces of myself I didn't realize I'd handed over. It started small, clearing his clothes out of the closet, deleting his name from speed dial, repainting the bedroom walls. People think healing looks like strength, but most days it looked like me curled up on the floor, forcing myself not to call him. My daughter was the anchor I didn't know I'd need. Her innocence, her questions, even her tears became a reminder that I had something pure worth fighting for. When she asked why her dad didn't tuck her in anymore, I told her the truth. Because people make choices, but that doesn't mean they stop loving you. It just means grown-ups have to figure out how to live better. One evening while packing her school lunch, she said, "You smile more now, Mommy." I hadn't noticed it, but she had. That night I looked in the mirror for a long time. The woman staring back at me wasn't the same one who used to make excuses for her husband's absences or silence her suspicions to keep the peace. No, this woman had been burned and still stood tall. I reconnected with old friends, people I distanced myself from because I was too busy being a wife, managing his moods, covering up cracks. I found comfort in their laughter, in their gentle, non-judging acceptance. Some of them knew, some suspected. None ever said, "I told you so." I also returned to my art, something I'd long abandoned in the rush of motherhood and marriage. Painting became therapy. Each brushstroke felt like reclaiming space that was once dimmed by someone else's shadow. I even held a small show at a local gallery. People came, they asked questions. They saw color and strength where I had once only seen pain. And then slowly I forgave him. Not for his sake, but for mine. Because forgiveness isn't about forgetting or excusing. It's about setting yourself free from the story they tried to write for you. He still sends cards, sometimes birthday presents for the kids. Occasionally, a message to say he regrets it all. I don't ignore them, but I don't engage either. He's no longer the main character in my life. I am. I built something from the ashes. Not a perfect life, but an honest one. And that matters more than anything. You see, when someone betrays you that deeply, they don't just break your heart. They try to erase your worth. But I refuse to let that be the ending. This is my story now. One of survival, rebuilding, and love. The kind that begins within. Part 5, The Unexpected. Chapter. A year passed. It's strange how time doesn't heal all wounds. It just teaches you how to live with the scars. I stopped checking his social media. I stopped imagining them together. Eventually, I even stopped wondering why. Because why was a question that only led me in circles. I focused instead on now. I was working part-time at the local art center, teaching weekend classes to kids. It was messy, loud, and exactly what I needed. Children don't pretend. They don't lie with kind eyes or hide knives in their smiles. They're honest. I craved that. One Saturday morning, while helping a student clean paint off his sneakers, I heard someone clear their throat at the door. I looked up, and there he was. Not him, not my ex-husband, someone else. A man holding a canvas under one arm and a folded sign-up form in the other. Slightly awkward, slightly amused. I think I'm in the right place. This is the adult beginner class, right? I stared at him for a beat too long. Then I nodded. You're right on time. His name was James. Divorced, father of 2. A math teacher with 0 artistic skill but infinite patience. He painted like a man who had something to prove, not to anyone else, but to himself. For weeks he kept showing up. Same time, same seat. Sometimes we stayed after class talking, first about brushes, then books, then life. He never pushed, never flirted in that practiced way I'd grown used to. He just saw me, not the woman betrayed, not the mother barely holding things together. Just me. I wasn't ready, not fully, but one night while walking him out after class, I told him about my ex, about my best friend, about the hospital, the affair, the silence. I braced myself for pity. Instead, he said, "You're still standing. That's more powerful than anything they did to you." It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something softer, safer, like the earth settling after a long, bitter storm. My daughter liked him, not because he brought gifts or tried too hard, but because he listened when she spoke, really listened. One night, as I tucked her into bed, she whispered, "You smile with your eyes now." I didn't need anything else. The pain didn't vanish. The betrayal didn't become less cruel. But I did. I became less afraid of being alone, less ashamed of having believed in the wrong people, less willing to settle for half-truths and half-love, and more open to the idea that maybe, just maybe, there's something waiting for us after we think we've lost it all. Not a fairy tale, but a second chance. And this time, I'm writing the story.